On August 13th, 2018, in Frederick, Colorado, a family tragedy unfolded that nobody saw coming. Chris WhatsApp his wife, Shannon, down after a trip and confessed he was having an affair and wanted a divorce. That night, betrayal turned deadly. Watts murdered his pregnant wife, 34-year-old Shannon, and then suffocated their daughters Bella, 4, and Celeste, 3. All the while, he carried on pretending like nothing had happened. The world was left reeling. One son turns on his family. A daughter hires hitmen to betray her parents. Brothers who seemed loving hide behind horrifying truths. These are not strangers. These are family. Stick around, because in this video, we're going to unpack the top 10 family betrayals in true crime, real stories, real heartbreak, all hidden behind the doors of homes that should have been safe. Case number 10. Parents discover their son is a wanted killer. Okay, so listen to this. It freaks me out every time. On May 20th, 1998, in rural Oregon, a 15-year-old named Kip Kinkle, yeah, that's his name, was caught with a gun at school. The next day, this is where it gets chilling. He grabbed his parents' rifle, shot and killed both of them, then left a note explaining it all. He literally wrote, "My head just doesn't work right. God damn these voices inside my head. I have to kill people. I have no other choice." Those were his words, written down by a 15-year-old right after he killed the very people who loved him the most. Then, the very next morning on May 21st, he shows up at Thurston High School's cafeteria, carrying a trench coat loaded with weapons, 2 pistols, a rifle, you name it, and he opens fire on his classmates. Killed 2 students, wounded 25 more, before a few brave classmates tackled him. What's so gut-wrenching here is a betrayal. Parents, trusted, safe home, and all of that shattered. One moment, these are your kids, your family. The next, they're suspects. They're the danger. And here's the thing, mental health stuff was coming, too. Kip was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia later, and he'd been hearing voices for years. But it only came out after the violence. Feels like such a missed moment. So yeah, this is our number 10 story. When parents discovered their son wasn't just troubled, he was a wanted killer. Case number 9. Lyle and Eric Menendez, California, 1989. On August 20th, 1989, in Beverly Hills, California, the Menendez brothers, Lyle and Eric, killed their wealthy parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez. They shot them multiple times in the family's living room, execution style. It was shocking. These 2 sons, part of an affluent family, suddenly turned against the very people who provided them with everything. The motive? It wasn't money. It was a dark, twisted secret they'd kept hidden for years. They claimed their parents had been abusing them. But the most jarring part? Their actions weren't just a crime. They were a public spectacle. The trial that followed was one of the most publicized in history. As details emerged of the brothers' secret lives, millions watched in disbelief, asking, could the alleged abuse really explain such brutal revenge? The trial would captivate the nation for years. Both brothers testified about years of physical and emotional abuse at the hands of their parents. They described a home life filled with fear, manipulation, and torment. But the prosecution countered, arguing that the murders were premeditated, driven by the brothers' greed and desire for their family's fortune. In the end, after 2 trials, both brothers were convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. Even after the verdict, the debate continued. Were they victims of abuse, or was it just a convenient excuse for murder? Before we move on to the next case, let me just say this. If you're enjoying these stories, if they're making you think, feel, and even question what you thought you knew about the world, this is exactly why you should subscribe. True crime, the stories of betrayal, and the dark truths behind these cases, they matter. These are not just stories. They're real lives, real consequences, and real lessons we can all learn from. So, if you want more of this, if you want to stay on top of the most gripping, shocking true crime cases, don't wait. Hit that subscribe button now. Trust me, you'll want to be here for the next one. Case number 8, a sister's deadly plot. The murder of Dr. Richard Schwartz. It was on December 8th, 2001, in Leesburg, Virginia. The crime was orchestrated by his 20-year-old daughter, Clara Jane Schwartz, as part of a fantasy role-playing game. The killing itself was perpetrated by her 18-year-old friend Kyle Hulbert, who had a history of mental illness. 21-year-old Michael Fall and 19-year-old Catherine Inglis were accessories to crime. The murder was carried out with a brutal plan. Clara lured her father to a secluded area where her accomplices ambushed him, stabbing him multiple times. It was cold, calculated, and devastating. But what made this crime even more chilling was the reason behind it. Clara's desire for freedom and money. She wanted to escape her father's controlling grip. Clara had been living in her father's shadow, constantly under his strict supervision. After years of manipulation and tension, she decided that the only way out was through death. Her friends, who helped her carry out the murder, seemed willing to assist in her plot, either out of loyalty or fear of Clara's promises. But after the crime, the details started to unravel. During her trial, Clara's defense team argued that she'd been a victim of severe emotional and psychological abuse, but the prosecution painted a different picture: a cold-blooded daughter willing to kill for a taste of independence. After a lengthy investigation, Clara was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. Case number 7. The Family Annihilator. Chris Watts. Imagine living in a picture-perfect home, where everything seems right, the smiles, the family moments, the love. But behind those closed doors, the darkest secrets can unfold. That's exactly what happened on August 13th, 2018 in Frederick, Colorado, when Chris Watts, the very image of a loving husband and father, became a killer. He murdered his pregnant wife, Shannon, and their 2 daughters, Bella and Celeste. For days, Watts lied, pretending to be the grieving husband. He even appeared on TV, pleading for the safe return of his family. But behind his calm demeanor, investigators were quickly piecing together the chilling truth. What made this betrayal even more shocking? Chris Watts wasn't just hiding his crimes. He was caught on camera, his lies unraveling one frame at a time. The truth came out when Watts confessed to murdering his family, telling investigators that he was consumed by guilt and shame. But his calm, emotionless confession only deepened the horror of his actions. As the investigation progressed, disturbing details about Chris Watts' private life were revealed. His affair with a co-worker, Nicole Kessinger, surfaced, another layer of betrayal. Watts had been living a double life, lying to his wife while planning her and their daughters' deaths. It became clear that this was more than a crime of passion. It was calculated, cold-hearted, and fueled by greed and desire for freedom. Case number 6. The girl who plotted her parents' deaths. In 2010, in Markham, Canada, Jennifer Pan had a plan that would end her parents' strict control over her life. Jennifer had grown up under the watchful eye of her father, Ben Pan, a demanding man who expected perfection. His rules were relentless, academic success above all else, little room for independence or mistakes. But after years of pressure, Jennifer began to resent her parents. She saw an escape in a twisted plot, orchestrating a home invasion to murder them. She hired 2 men to carry out the brutal crime, and on November 8, 2010, they entered the Pan household. Jennifer's mother, Huynh Pan, was tragically killed, and her father was shot multiple times. But he survived. The twist? Jennifer's father, despite his injuries, survived to tell the tale. During the trial, he bravely testified against his own daughter, revealing how she had meticulously planned the murder. Jennifer's own web of lies unraveled, and she was ultimately convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. It was a betrayal that stunned everyone. How could a daughter, who seemed to be so loved, go to such extremes? Number 5. The son who killed for inheritance. On January 4th, 2015, in New York City, Thomas Gilbert Jr., a young man from a wealthy family, committed an unimaginable crime. He shot and killed his father, Thomas Gilbert Sr., a well-known hedge fund manager, over a dispute about his allowance. But this wasn't just about money. It was about control, entitlement, and the dark side of family loyalty. Thomas Jr. had lived a life of privilege, but that wasn't enough for him. He felt that his father wasn't providing enough for him, and after a heated argument about his allowance, he decided to take matters into his own hands. What made this case even more chilling? Gilbert Jr. didn't just snap in a moment of rage. He meticulously planned the murder. After killing his father, he staged a scene to make it look like a suicide. even going so far as to place the gun in his father's hand. It wasn't until days later that the truth came to light. Gilbert Jr. was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. The case shocked everyone, raising the question, what happens when money outweighs loyalty and love in a family? Number 4. The daughter who hired a hitman. Sometimes, the most horrific crimes happen not in dark alleys, but in the safety of a family home. On September 2nd, 2003, in Pocatello, Idaho, 16-year-old Sarah Johnson orchestrated a murder so chilling it could have been pulled straight from a crime novel. But this was no fictional plot. It was real. Frustrated by her parents' constant control over her life, especially over her relationship with a 37-year-old man named Brent, Sarah decided that the only way out was to end their lives. She hired a hitman to do the unthinkable, kill both of her parents. In the dead of night, her parents, Michelle and Alan Johnson, were shot and killed in their sleep. The crime was brutal, cold, and completely premeditated. What made this even more shocking? Sarah wasn't immediately caught. In fact, she played the role of the grieving daughter perfectly. She gave emotional interviews, pretending to be devastated. She even attended the memorial services, all the while knowing the truth. She had orchestrated it all. The truth came to light when investigators pieced together her involvement. After a lengthy investigation, Sarah was arrested and ultimately confessed to hiring the hitman. She was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. Case number 3. The Stauffer adoption scandal, emotional betrayal. Not all betrayals are violent, but some can still hit you right in the heart. On May 26, 2020, YouTube influencers Micah and James Stauffer made a shocking announcement that would leave millions stunned. They revealed that they had rehomed their adopted son, Huxley, after just 3 years of raising him. Huxley was adopted from China in 2017, and Micah and James have been documenting their life with him on their family YouTube channel. The couple had portrayed themselves as loving parents, often sharing Huxley's milestones and their journey together with their audience. But behind the camera, things weren't as perfect as they seemed. The betrayal came when the Stauffers explained in a tearful video that they had decided to rehome Huxley due to his special needs and the overwhelming difficulties they faced with his care. They claimed it was a decision made out of love, but many viewers saw it differently. The backlash was swift and intense, with accusations of exploitation and manipulation, especially since the family had profited from their YouTube videos about Huxley's adoption. What made this even more disturbing was the way the Stauffers presented their story. They had built their entire platform on the idea of family, love, and togetherness, only to reveal this heart-wrenching decision that felt more like an abandonment than a solution. The public saw the betrayal as not just one between parent and child, but also one between the Stauffers and their audience. The scandal sparked widespread outrage, forcing the Stauffers to step away from their YouTube career. While it wasn't a murder, this case left many people asking, how much of what we see online is real? And how far can fame and fortune drive a person to betray the trust of a child? Case number 2. The boy who killed his mother for grades. On July 16, 2011, in Port St. Lucie, Florida, Tyler Hadley, a 17-year-old high school student, committed one of the most shocking and twisted murders imaginable. Tyler brutally killed both of his parents, Blanche and Blake Hadley, in their own home. But what makes this case even more chilling is what he did afterward. Tyler didn't just murder his parents and hide the bodies. No. After killing them with a hammer, he went ahead and threw a wild party, right in the same house where their bodies were still lying. The party lasted for hours, with his friends coming in and out, completely unaware of the grisly scene in the other room. What's even more disturbing, the bodies remained in the house for hours, while Tyler and his friends partied, as if everything was normal. It wasn't until the next day that Tyler finally confessed, and police discovered the truth. The reason behind it all? Tyler had been struggling with his grades, feeling pressure to meet his parents' expectations. But instead of seeking help or talking to them, he made a horrifying decision. He killed them in cold blood over a conflict that should never have escalated to this level. The shocking detail that still haunts people is how casually Tyler continued his life after crime, throwing a party, playing music, and enjoy himself while his parents' bodies were only feet away. Case number 1. The Ultimate Betrayal. Gypsy Rose Blanchard and the Murder of Dee Dee. On June 14, 2015, in Springfield, Missouri, a crime unfolded that stunned the nation. Gypsy Rose Blanchard, a young woman who had spent her entire life being controlled by her mother, Dee Dee Blanchard, finally took matters into her own hands. Gypsy, who had been suffering from years of abuse through Munchausen by proxy, was manipulated by her mother into believing she was severely ill, physically and mentally. Dee Dee went so far as to falsify Gypsy's medical records, putting her daughter through unnecessary treatments and surgeries. Gypsy was led to believe that she was weak, helpless, and unable to live without her mother. But as Gypsy grew older, she began to realize the truth, that her mother had been controlling her life through lies and manipulation. Feeling trapped and desperate for freedom, Gypsy confided in her boyfriend, Nicholas Gojon, who was also drawn into her plan. Together, they orchestrated the unthinkable, the murder of Dee Dee Blanchard. They carried out the crime in cold blood, stabbing Dee Dee to death in her own home. The ultimate betrayal was complete. Gypsy killed the woman who had held her captive for years. What makes this case even more shocking? Gypsy's motives were not fueled by hatred, but by a desperate need for freedom. A child pushed to kill the parent who controlled her life. The story of Gypsy Rose Blanchard is a heartbreaking tale of manipulation, abuse, and a mother's dark control over her daughter's life. Wow. When you look back at all these cases, it's hard not to feel the weight of it. I mean, we always expect danger from strangers, right? But sometimes the real threat is hiding right behind the front door, in the people we trust the most. So, tell me, which case shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know what hit you hardest, what made you question everything. And here's a thought. If you're still here listening, chances are you're fascinated by these stories. Don't let them slip away. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. And trust me, the next story will be just as jaw-dropping.